In the pre-dawn silence of a wind-scoured Afghan valley, she stood alone, her breath trembling, her palms damp against the cold metal of the M107. The SEAL Admiral's question still burned in her mind. "Why are you here, Sergeant?" It wasn't an accusation. It was a challenge, and it stung more deeply than she expected, touching the place where duty and fear intersected. She could hear distant gunfire echoing like a reminder of every decision that brought her to this moment. She felt suddenly small, painfully human, yet something unyielding stirred inside her. "Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening." She remembered the Admiral's stare, sharp enough to cut through excuses. He'd read her file. He knew about the operation she failed to save, the one she still carried like an invisible wound. That was why she volunteered for this mission, why she couldn't sleep without replaying every mistake, why she believed that if she could just make this shot, maybe she could breathe again. Around her, the unit whispered among themselves, some doubtful, some hopeful, all waiting. Dust danced in the thin columns of sunrise, drifting like faded ghosts across the valley. The insurgents had taken a group of villagers hostage, dragging them toward the border, too far for anyone else to intervene, too fast for any rescue team to intercept, too unpredictable for a drone strike. There was only one option left, and it was placed in her shaking hands. The Admiral stepped beside her. "You don't have to prove anything," he told her quietly. But that was the problem. She did. Not to him. Not to the watching team. To herself. She lowered herself into position, the earth warm beneath her chest, the crisp air thinning as she steadied her breath. At 2,800 meters, the target was little more than a fleck of movement among rocks and shadows. The leader, the one dragging a teenage boy by the collar. The shot needed to be perfect, not just lethal, but righteous. A single bullet to unravel a nightmare. Her heart collided with doubt. What if she missed? What if she hit the boy? What if, by pulling this trigger, she simply added another scar to an already bleeding conscience? She thought she'd never forgive herself if she failed again. She was wrong. The Admiral knelt beside her, watching her posture, her breathing, the storm in her eyes. "You're here," he said softly, "because you're the only one willing to carry the weight." The wind shifted. A low, collective hush fell over the team, as though the entire valley were holding its breath. She felt it tooth-tightening calm before a storm, the kind that makes fear feel like electricity in the bones. She squeezed the trigger. The thunder of the M17 rolled across the mountains like a God-sent reckoning. A heartbeat later, the leader collapsed, the boy stumbling free, the other insurgents scattered in confusion, giving the rescue team the seconds they needed to surge forward like a rising tide. Boots slammed against stone. Commands rang through the dusty air. Within minutes, the hostages were gathered into the protective embrace of the rescuers, some crying, some stunned into silence. But she barely heard any of it. Her hands trembled not from recoil, but from the realization that the weight she had carried for so long had finally shifted, not vanished, but changed. The Admiral placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "That's why you're here," he murmured. "That's the villagers were led to safety." One elderly woman paused, turned back, and pressed her palms together in a gesture of gratitude, the kind that doesn't need translation, the kind that sinks into the heart and stays there. A single truth crystallized inside her, because courage doesn't erase, it transforms it. And as the sun climbed above the ridge, warming the valley that had moments earlier felt colder than fear, she understood something deeper. The shot she fired wasn't just an answer to the Admiral's question. It was an answer to the question she'd been afraid to ask herself, because in the quiet after chaos, kindness still survives steady, patient, waiting to be rediscovered. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below. Subscribe for more stories of courage and redemption, and remember to keep searching for the light even on the hardest days.